3, 2, 1, 0. We're live. Okay, so another podcast on Actflix, and I have an amazing guest. And yeah, I say that all the time, but most of the guests that I had here told me you need to talk to that woman, and I'm like, sure, I'm working on it. And here she's here. So, how do you say it? Like Sjamilla?
Sjamilla.
Sjamilla.
Yes.
Sjamilla. So Sjamilla is. I'm going to, in a few words, introduce Sjamilla, and you're gonna tell me more about you in a few minutes. I mean, I know, but I think people there want to know. So, Sjamilla, she's a freelance tech recruiter. Actually, her company names is just her name in like SVDT. How would you say that?
Toran, SVDT.
SVDT, Toran, yeah. Recruitment. You're a trainer, you're a writer,
Yes.
and you are an international speaker. You're a speaker, but an international one as well. You just came back from Atlanta, where you actually keynote a conference there, and while doing my research, I also saw that you are kind of researcher. You go out there, look for data, trying to get a certain set of data and make sense of it. You're gonna tell us more about that, or maybe I'm completely wrong. But you actually didn't start your career into as a recruiter. You were working on something completely different. So I'm curious to know how you went from one to the other. So, and one of the things that I noticed while doing my research is like every single person that recommended you will point out like she's driven. One of the things that I like, they said, she will do whatever it takes to get it done. She's driven. By what? I'm like, what is the thing that drives this amazing woman? So, thank you. Welcome, Sjamilla.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining the podcast. I'm a bit. I enjoyed the fact that you could be here. I tried to connect with you and understand what is your world at some point early this year or last year, I believe, and now I can talk to you.
Yes.
So.
I'm very honored to be here. Thank you. Thank you for having me. You're making me blush with all those compliments. So I hope you can see that.
Can you tell us more about you? Like, on top of whatever I said, or maybe something was wrong, or you want to add?
I think you kind of explained a bit about me. But I haven't been a recruiter that long, actually. Well, I started in recruitment in 2015, as you said, not knowing anything about recruitment. I was hired by an agency for IT freelancers, and they wanted the first hunter in the
Hunter.
Hunter. I don't like that name. Added to their company. So I was like, well, it's something new. I can try, and if I don't like it, I can always do something else. And that's where I found out there was this whole world called recruitment and finding people and sourcing. So I actually found out there was this thing called sourcing. So I went to my colleagues and said, hey, listen, I'm actually a sourcer, not a hunter. And I started learning things myself. There wasn't someone who already did this in that company. So previously they had applicants, but that started to getting less and less. And they wanted someone to actually find those people and reach out, call them. That was not really something that I felt comfortable with, but I did find them. And I started sending them messages instead of calling them. And I found it way more effective to get replies. So that's how I started out. After a while, after 2 years, I felt that I wanted something new. And I saw a vacancy at one of my dream companies. I was a fangirl of this product even before I started in recruitment. And they were looking for a recruiter who loved Blendle. That was the first company where I started as an in-house recruiter. And I actually had a conversation in my mailbox with support before I went to. I was in the beta version of the product, and they asked me like, "Hey, how do you feel about this product?" And this is kind of embarrassing, but I'm going to tell it anyway.
We take that. We take those embarrassing stories.
So I had a conversation with their support saying like, you want me to tell how I feel about your product? And I sent them like my WhatsApp history with my best friend saying, if people could fall in love with a product, I would fall in love with Blendle. It was really cheesy, but I had that in my mailbox, the conversation. So I sent that to their HR manager saying, hey, see, I have proof I've been like a Blendle fan for a very long time. Well, history tells in the end I was hired not only because of that, but I think because I am really driven maybe, I also think that they had another recruiter at that time, and he's my favorite person in the world. He's one of the best recruiters I know, Timon, and I was the complete opposite of Timon. So I'm really outgoing and really direct, and he's just a very nice person. He's a really good recruiter because he's so nice, and I'm more like kicking and changing things around. So I think that was a really good match, and that worked out pretty well. So that's how I got into in-house recruitment.
Yeah. I have a question for you before we continue. So when you started at that agency, and then you had this job, like you have to find people, what was the first technology that you encounter, and how did you make sense of that's what it means, and that's the person that I need for that exact position?
Good question. So the first thing, even before I started there, I was looking at all the vacancies they had online, and I remember the first thing funny and kind of weird, but it was a .NET vacancy, seriously was. And I was like, what is .NET? So I just started Googling everything that I didn't know. So every term I would find in a vacancy, I would Google it and try to figure out what is what. I have to confess, I also bought this book when I just started, also kind of embarrassing. It was called IT Recruitment for Dummies or something like that. I think it was from Ayub Shah. I don't actually know for sure, but it was something like the ultimate IT recruitment guide for dummies. And it really helped me to learn like the overview of things, but kind of outdated. So at the moment they talk about waterfall methods and stuff like that, which that's really old school. But it helped me learn like the hierarchy in companies. Because before I went into tech recruitment, I was like working in import and export of vegetables. I was literally working with old men with like dust coats on who don't know how to fax, and I don't know how to fax because I was 22 at the time. So it was really interesting. So, and then I started learning by doing that.
Yeah, that's your drive. That's the thing. You, as you mentioned, before you even started, you were already looking for all these keywords. And then how did you put them together? What, like, if someone asked you today, what is .NET? It would be like, okay, this is how you can go and find out information online. What will be that thing? How would you?
I would literally say, go and Google it. And actually, there's a lot of videos on YouTube telling you about those terms. So there's a video. What I do when I don't know something, and this is also, I'm going all out. I'm telling every dumb thing I do.
But they do work for you. You call them dumb, but they do work for. They did work for you.
What I would do is just Google like this or that term, Kubernetes, explained to a kid. And there's actually a video of a guy who had made like this video with giraffes and elephants explaining what that is. And it's so helpful because it makes me understand things in a very simple way.
Wow.
and it helps me understand like the basic stuff.
Okay.
I want to be clear, I'm not a developer. I'm never going to be a developer. But I do kind of understand what I'm looking for. And that is one, by searching for it, and two, by talking with people about it. I think that's the main thing. If you don't know something, don't act like you know, or don't assume stuff, but ask people. I think that's, yeah.
Okay. So the company you were working for didn't really provide you like a framework to learn those things. You had to go all your way and learn.
But I think that's the biggest gift I received
in
in recruitment. Absolutely, because I had the complete freedom to figure out everything myself.
Okay.
And no one told me like, hey, you can't spend 2 hours a day on reading this stuff and doing that stuff. And I think that for an agency was really different than a lot of agencies work. Not so heavy on KPIs, but more on, hey, how can she help us with this information? And I found out that I really like digging into the corners of the internet. So next to only sourcing for people and just hitting keywords, I always also started like doing research for sales. So providing them with information about companies, with some like organization maps that I found somewhere like on an open backlink of a page and stuff like that. So, and that's how I kind of learned sourcing.
Okay, so are we okay that we call you like a hacker? Something like that?
I don't know.
Because, you know, there's that bad connotation, but it also means that you find your way around things.
Yeah.
And,
I find stuff
that
that sometimes I find stuff that people don't want me to find. But if I do find like something really that I shouldn't find, I would mention it to the company. So I don't think I'm a hacker, but I'm not using it.
Yeah, but you know, those are white hackers. They find a thing and they're like, hey, there is a hole here. You gotta fix it, or just use that thing. Pretty cool. Yeah. So there is something that I think will help anyone that's starting in that industry or people listening to us. It's the in your profile. It's mentioned I'm a sourcer and a recruiter.
Yeah.
So sourcing and recruitment, what is the difference? How would you say differ that?
I think it really depends on the company that you're working at.
Okay.
So I think good recruiters should also be able to source. So I think that's a no-brainer these days. If you're hiring a tech recruiter, but any other recruiter, in my honest opinion, should be able to go out and use sourcing to find candidates and not only wait for applicants to come in. In tech, this is a problem, but for other roles, for operations or whatever, I think it's nice to have also candidates that you find yourself compared to the people who are coming in. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
But next to that, I also think you have recruiters who are only doing inbound stuff, and you have sourcers next to that. So you could be a sourcer who only finds people. For example, one assignment I had, I was only like looking for people and creating pipelines. I wasn't even reaching out to them, which was kind of nice next to the other stuff I've been always doing.
So how does that work? Like you just get people applying to the
No,
job?
I just create a list for them. So I'm just basically creating a list with very high profile people that they can find themselves and their information. So
okay.
That's so they have recruitment, but they don't have the time or the
so you do the sourcing.
Those people, I only do the sourcing for that one company. At other companies, I also do like the whole recruitment part, screening candidates, managing hiring managers. It really depends. But if you would ask me to, at this point at my life, I'm not ruling that out, but at this point at my life, if you would ask me to do only screening calls with candidates, I would say no because I don't think I would add value to a company like so. So
that gives me that leads me to my next question, like your personal touch.
Yeah.
in the recruitment world. Because if you, at some point you mention, well, no, I don't want to spend time calling people all day because that doesn't bring really any value. What is your personal touch? What makes the thing, once again, you mentioned your HR, your colleague at Blender.
Yeah.
Who I think he works at Google now.
Yeah, true.
Right?
Wow, you're good in your research.
I look for information before coming to my podcast because I do believe that this is important. So he's actually the one who mentioned that she will do whatever it takes to get things done. So the question there was like, you didn't want to do that, like calling people, and then through your work, your research, you came up with some things that define you. What are those things?
Yeah, I think one of the things that defines me is I wanna treat people the way that I want to receive messages or calls. So when they asked me to call, and they were like, "That's the way, you know, everyone calls." I don't like cold calls. I just don't, and I am so awkward when I pick up the phone and call someone that I don't know, that it doesn't work for me. There's a lot of people for who it does work, by the way. If they're good and comfortable with it, do it, you know?
Okay.
But I'm not. So, but I do feel like I can write a bit. So for me, sending messages that felt better, and that was actually a messages I wanted to receive. And then I felt that working with templates didn't feel good. I don't like receive templates either. So I'm really acting on my own feeling, and for me that works. So I think that's one thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's basically saying, I'm gonna send you a message.
Yeah.
But that message, I'm sending that to myself.
Yeah.
So I would just want to feel like when I receive that message, the feeling that I'm gonna have here, I want you to have it. So basically, it gives you the power of writing something powerful.
And next to that, what you say, like that colleague mentioned, like, I'm not afraid to do what it takes.
Yeah.
I'm really direct. And that's also something that people kind of have trouble with sometimes. Because I really say how it is, and I'm not going to lie to you if I think differently. Which also means that sometimes I have conflicts with hiring managers, for example, because I feel we should do things this way, and they feel they should do things that way. But in the end, I think I'm going to, if you don't believe me, I'm going to show you data.
Okay.
If you don't, I'm going to show you that my way works, and I'm also I'm also the first person to admit that if I made a mistake, that it wasn't working. Yeah. But I do think you should, if something isn't working, you can stare blind on what isn't working, but you can also try something different. Yeah. And I think I'm not afraid to speak up to people who are in management or something like that. And I do think that's something that a lot of recruiters who start out, and this is actually something that I saw in Atlanta while we were having roundtables, and there were quite a few people who just started out in recruitment, and we were talking about personalization. And some of them, they said like, hey, I want to do what you guys are doing, like really personal messages, but my manager, they want me to send hundreds of them a day. And then you start a conversation about maybe about seniority, or about like being able to stand up to your boss, or like to show them that something different could work too. Because they want to see numbers, but in the end, if you want people to send 100 messages a day and you only get one reply because your message is crap, sorry, then why not send 10 messages and get at least 4 replies? Yeah. And that's about data and proving and trying things. So what I said to these people is like, hey, I don't want you to change your complete work in a day. I want you to think about how you can spend 1 hour a week personalizing messages
yeah.
and see for yourself if it works.
Yeah.
And I believe it works, but if you don't believe it works, it's not going to work.
It feels like it's common sense. It should be common sense.
Yeah.
Do you think it's still something heavily done in the industry today? Like
yeah, absolutely.
sending?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so. I actually have some data before I went to SourceCon in Atlanta.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. So basically, you did a survey.
Yeah.
What was the goal of that survey? What did you try to find doing that survey?
So I was keynoting on the engagement part. And I wanted to talk about what I do to get responses to my messages, and how I feel that people could make quick fixes to get replies.
I think the title was how do people on the other side of the screen feel about our message?
It was something related.
Yeah,
it was lonely sourcing when candidates don't reply, but that was the subtitle actually.
Subtitle. So how do I make sure that people respond to my outreaches?
That was the point. And for me, that means that's three things. That starts with pre-search and research before I even go and talk to a hiring manager as a recruiter. I want to know what I'm working on. The thing that I did in the beginning when I started in my industry, I'm still doing that. On another scale, it's more market intelligence, something like that. But it's knowing what you're up to before you go talk to a manager. Then I feel, but I have to admit, I work in small companies. I work for startups. So I feel privileged that I can actually work together with the teams, the engineering teams whatever teams, and hiring managers. So what I would do is work together with the team to review those candidates. So instead of, I think it's maybe a weird example, but I always say it's this. I'm your energy supplier, and I'm going to call you to give you a new contract. And I'm saying like, hey, I want you to go to Eneco, that's one in the Netherlands, instead of Nuon, and I'm going to sell you something. And you say, oh yeah, I'm interested. Okay, let's do this. Then they call you back and they say, yeah, I had a better look, but it's not available in your region. I would be like, hey, why did you call me and spend time on me in the first place? I think that's kind of the same thing with recruitment. So if I'm a recruiter, I'm going to send you a message. And this is quite controversial. It's kind of weird that I'm saying this because a lot of people disagree. But I feel that if I'm a recruiter and I'm going to send you a message as an engineer, and you're interested, and then I'm going to show your profile to my hiring manager, and they are going to have a look at it and say like, hey, I'm not going to spend my time on this person. What am I going to say to you?
You already call, you make the connection.
I already had a connection with you. You would think bad of me, of the company, and of the hiring managers over there. How would I explain to you that they don't want to talk to you when I reached out? So that's why I try to turn it around and have the people that I work with look at them first. And I know what I'm looking for, so I know they're not going to waste their time looking at those profiles. And give me context. Again, I'm not a developer, but I want them to give me some kind of context of what they like and what they don't like, especially in tech recruitment. And then I reach out with that information, which makes the message feel really, really personal. And they know that I at least did my research or talked to the team, because I would mention that. And then I get a reply, because it would kind of be impolite to not reply to me. And that's what I was talking about. So about the data part. I wanted to validate some of my thoughts and ways of working, because I'm doing this based on a feeling, but I wanted to know how people really feel about it. And if there was a difference between, for example, recruiters, how they feel about it, and developers. And so I asked a lot of stuff about the way that people receive messages right now. like what is the main platform, what do you prefer and what do you don't prefer, and about like more like feelings. So I would ask like, how often does this happen? And then a recruiter asks for my resume in the first outreach. And then, for example, I have some data in front of me to this question. I have 21 people saying always. I have 23% saying very often. So almost 50% of the engineers that replied to my survey, that was about, I think, 260 engineers or people in software development. They say like that recruiters ask for their resume in the first contact.
The first contact.
And again, why would I say, I'm a passive candidate. I have no interest in moving. And even if I did, so you have to be lucky to find someone who is interested in moving. Why would I share something that is so personal with you after receiving your first message? And, you know,
Isn't it because... this is just my thoughts right there. A few years ago, I think like recruiters were in the position where like people were looking for jobs, so you wouldn't put too much energy there because you'd be like, "Yeah, I'm offering you a job."
Yeah,
like
true.
That was the kind of the approach, and then obviously the ball changed side, and then it's like, yeah, you need me at your company because there is a talent war.
True.
It's not anymore. Yeah, there's jobs, and I'm offering you a job. Maybe that made the recruiter feeling like they're the one kind of deciding where you're going. So if I'm asking you for your resume, you should be
but it
privileged or proud of it or whatever.
I think this is a long time ago.
Yeah,
especially in tech recruitment. So so 5 years ago, when you had like a financial position open, you would get like hundreds of applicants. These days, when you have a vacancy like that, and not at a famous company, but like at a normal mid-sized company anywhere, you don't get any applicants. But for tech, this has been over maybe 10 years. So, and there are not that many, like there's a couple of good recruiters and sourcers who have been in this industry for longer than 10 or 15 years. But there's a lot of people who just came in this industry the same as I did 5 years ago, because recruiters started getting in high demand, and things switched from agency to in-house recruitment. And I think that's one of the big things. The agency is fast work. You have to compete with like your competitors. You have to be fast, and you have to find people really quickly. And that's where the human touch gets lost. I think that's a big problem. It's numbers, because it's a money game. And when you go to in-house recruitment, it's more like long-term. So for me personally, that means that when I reach out, I always say this, is that for me as a person, changing careers is a life-changing decision. I think for everyone. So it has influence. It influenced my day schedule. It influenced my relationship with my friends, but also with my partner. It has a big impact. For me personally, and I'm a recruiter, that decision, that I don't make a decision like that overnight. It's not when someone reaches out to me, I must be really desperate, like to think, this is the dream. So when I reach out to someone, I am hoping that they're like, I really want to make a connection with them and talk with them and have a conversation. And I hope they're like kind of looking for something new. But in the end, I feel like it's a long-term game. So I am in touch with candidates for 3 years now that I never hired somewhere. But I know that someday when I have the right position and the right thing, or when they are looking, they will come to me. And I think that's something that a lot of people forget. When you are a recruiter and you're approaching someone, when you're an in-house recruiter, but also when you're an agency recruiter, actually, you are representing a company and a brand.
Agency, do you think?
Well, if you can, so I'm an agency and I am working exclusively for name a brand, Heineken, for example.
Okay,
and I'm telling
I get that. Yeah,
you know,
I get that. Yeah,
and you represent your own brand, kind of.
Yeah.
So if you're a candidate and I'm reaching out to you, you're an engineer.
Yeah.
You're going to look at my LinkedIn profile, right?
Indeed.
You want to know who I am. You maybe Google my name and see others, you know. And I think that's something that a lot of people easily overlook, is that it's a people game. It's a game about we're not selling cows, you know. We're talking about humans who have feelings, and I think that's something that is really important to keep in mind, and that's something that I feel is really important. If someone approached me, I don't want to be a number.
Okay, so that's interesting. What else did you get from that your survey?
So that's actually very interesting. So I asked a lot of these kind of questions. So one example is like, hey, how often does it happen that a recruiter sends a message that is clearly made for me, in this example for you as a candidate? And out of all the responses, including HR and recruiters, 40% of them says rarely, 14% says never. So over 50% of the people say they never or rarely receive a message that is clearly made for them.
Wow.
Which is
appalling. It's unbelievable. Like, wow, how?
And then you have like I asked them like the importance of how important do you feel that this is, and I scrambled like all the questions, so it was like different. It wasn't like it's easy to fill in based on what I previously said. It was completely not related to each other. Then I asked them, well, how important do you feel that a recruiter sends a message that is clearly made for you? And over 90% of the people said it's important or very important. But then look at the numbers, how often it happens. Wow. And there's a huge difference. And I think that's such a big win. If you
take that time to write those messages and personalize them,
and again, you're not only representing yourself, but you're representing a company, a brand. So have you ever heard that example of Virgin, like Richard Branson's company?
I know the company, I know the guy, but
they did research about their hiring process and about their application process and stuff. It's not so sourcing related, but I think it's really interesting. They used to lose a lot of money, millions, because of bad candidate experience. So what happens is that people applied, recruiters ghosted them or never came back or had bad feedback experiences. And that cost that company a lot of money, because people wouldn't, like, they're a telecom company, and people would either cancel their subscription to that company. They wouldn't, when considering taking a new telecom provider, they wouldn't take Virgin, and they would talk about that experience to their friends and their family, which, if they are close and related and they really had a bad experience, those people wouldn't be your customer. And in the end, like, you want people to think good of your company.
Even if you don't get in through the process, you still want to provide them.
And I think that's something that, for me as a recruiter working at a company, I am probably going to be the first contact point for a small company, but also for a big company. How many people have you talked with that work at Nike, for example? You know, you have to realize that you're probably, even if you work for a big brand, that you're probably the only and the first person that someone's going to connect with. The impression that you leave is so important for not only for recruitment, but also for like how they think about your brand.
I mean, to me, whatever you're saying now, it feels like common sense.
Yeah, for me too. So I'm really interested. So I had this slide at SourceCon, which was, for me, feels like basic recruitment. everyone in that room should get
Yeah.
the difference between an applicant and a sourced candidates. But it's often something that I have to explain to hiring managers. So what I tell them is like, hey, you have applicants, they apply to a job. That means that they are motivated. Probably not everyone is motivated to get the job.
Yeah.
They know about your company and they know about the job. Then you have passive candidates, source candidates, who are not motivated to start at your company, who might not even know about your company or what you're doing. And they are not motivated to get the job. So if you are sending a message to a candidate, asking them to apply for a role, and they never heard of your company, I'm a candidate. Why would I spend time on something that I don't want, that I don't know about, you know? And I think I was really shocked to learn when I showed that slide that people were actually taking pictures of that and tweeting it, and like big industry leaders were retweeting it, saying like, hey, this really makes sense. And I was like, but this is like
common sense.
This is like
should just be basic,
so
fundamental.
fundamental. And I do think that it's a no-brainer and everyone gets it, but I do think we as recruiters, we don't often think about it enough. But I always try to think about how it feels to be on the other side of the table.
Okay.
And that's something that I hope other recruiters do too, because that really change how you connect with people and how you interact with people.
Yeah, okay. So basically, your survey, you still have more.
I could talk like for 2 weeks about this survey.
So let me quickly change gears here, because I have a few more questions for you. Like a lot of questions actually. So when you actually this data analysis thing is not something you've done already in the past.
No.
Well, so you're not just doing. That's what I was mentioning. You're a researcher. You're not just doing your recruitment sourcing, but you're trying to understand the trends and things like that. What is the why? Like,
because and this is a lot to do with like my personal insecurities, because I don't want to be on a stage. So the first time when I did a public talk, I also did research on like engagement topic, and that the only reason why I did that, and this is going to sound really stupid, because I had this idea I had this dream about me standing on that stage and saying stuff, why I do stuff like this, and then having people like Glenn Cathy, for example, booing me in the crowd. That was seriously...
Stop that, you're lying, or whatever.
Yeah, so that was actually the only reason I wanted to know, instead of saying stuff based on a gut feeling, on my feelings, I want to know if other people feel the same way. I want to know how candidates feel. I kind of know because I work a lot with engineers, and like we talk a lot about the messages they get and like recruiters sending them messages, because that's also a thing. When you receive a message which is really crappy, you're going to talk about it either with your friends or with your recruiter friends, and that's that spreads. So I wanted to know how. So I'm not a researcher, and I kind of made the most like basic mistakes, which I learned from. So that's also a good thing.
I'm gonna go back to those mistakes, because I have like a question that kind of covers that. But something that I see, and I think we connect on LinkedIn a few months ago, and I saw you were going away for a few months, and I probably even sent you a message to say like, hey, if you need help with this, because I just felt like you were someone I can talk to with that, because I'm actually a software engineer. I'm an introvert. I was trying to create a brand here in Amsterdam, so connect with the right people, and I felt like you were just there. And then after meeting a few people, they told me you should talk to her. So it kind of confirmed what I thought. Okay, and which takes me to the fact that you build a brand. you have a brand. Are you aware of that, or
Well,
was it on purpose, or
no.
what is the
No,
main
it's
thing there?
totally not on purpose, but I am aware of it. I would be lying if I said like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So so I'm not going to lie.
How does that help? Actually, that's the main
Well,
question there.
and that's where it gets really interesting, because it does help. It helps me it helps me in a couple of ways. I'm a freelancer. It helps me to find assignments. That's the first thing.
Okay.
To be honest, I give sourcing trainings. It helps me to find companies that are interested in learning, getting better at sourcing. So that's one part. Then the second part, it helps me when a candidate looks at my profile and see the stuff that I'm working on and the stuff that I'm saying, it makes me look more credible.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I hope so.
It does.
The other part is that instead of like finding people, I have a lot of people actually reaching out to me because of the content that I put on the internet, which is, it helps.
Okay.
And one example, it was really funny. Did you know about, have you heard about this GitHub list that I made? So I made this list on GitHub, and I actually wrote a blog about why I did that. This coming out this week, but I'm going to spoil it anyway. So I created that because I was literally getting crazy of having everything everywhere on my computer. I didn't have any, like, it was everywhere. I had like 100,000 of bookmarks with tools and stuff, and I just couldn't handle everything in different places. So I started working on this list, and because I work a lot in GitHub with the engineers that I work in, like.
Do you realize that sounds weird? Like, I work a lot on GitHub. Who are you? I'm a recruiter.
Well,
like, you see what I'm saying? It probably it's okay. Saying it sounds weird is probably not the right way of phrasing it, but it's like, whoever is listening now and who's like a software engineer or a recruiter, be like, did you just say GitHub? Like, she works a lot with GitHub. Like, is she a programmer? But you're using it.
I'm using it in a complete different way.
Right,
so I am using it as an applicant tracking system, but that's another story. But so I started. When I started writing, like So I thought, like, hey, okay, I'm going to make this list for myself, but why not share it? Because that's the way how I learned, by following other people and learning about what other people are doing and stuff. So I figured I just create it on GitHub, because I didn't create any of these tools. Most tools I found because of other great people in the industry. Why not make this list public? But then suddenly it blew up. And Hung Lee, he has this newsletter every Sunday, Recruitment Brain Food. He shared it like 2 times. And I actually had engineers editing like some of the flaws that I had in the code in there. And but I love that. So, and they were actually sending me messages on LinkedIn like, hey, I edited this or that. I am not looking for a job. And I didn't ask you if you were looking for a job. And he said, but if I was, I would send you a message. Okay, so it helps me, you know. I don't do that because I want the publicity. I really didn't.
It's just part of your process, learning, searching the information, and then basically things gets back to you without really you planning it.
I feel like I got so much knowledge of sourcing and recruitment because of how people share things online. I don't see any people, like, I don't see other recruiters or sourcers as competitors. I think sharing knowledge and making each other better is what is going to be, what is going to make you good in what you do. So,
obviously, as a speaker and a writer, you gotta put yourself out there, meaning that you're just helping other people. And as you mentioned when we were discussing preparing the podcast at some point, you mentioned like you learn by reading other people's work. So it's important, like, you share as well. So I love that. But I'm that developer that reach out to you saying, anytime if you want to understand this, because I think it's just whatever you're putting out there is valuable. So
I hope so.
It's a brand that you're building, even though you didn't plan that at first, but it's there, and I think you're doing it really great.
Thank you. Yeah, I am really awkward when it comes to people saying stuff like that.
But then, how would you advise? Which advice would you give to young recruiter, people starting or getting into that industry to put themselves and do that job really well?
I think the best thing, or the thing that really makes recruiters good in what they're doing, is being curious. So
being curious.
Being eager, wanting to know everything. Don't be afraid to ask industry leaders or people who you look up to help you, because people are there to help because they all learned the same way.
Yeah.
And if you don't think you know stuff, so you don't like. I think there's a saying like, knowing that you don't know stuff makes you smarter than like not knowing. So it's
but it's also scares you, like really.
Yeah, but
because
you can't know everything, and
yeah,
I
that's
think
true.
it's important
that is true.
That so if you have the drive to learn those things, then you'll get a long way. But don't say things like don't just reach out to a developer, for example, and say like, hey, I know you did this and that. Without really understanding what they're looking for. Yeah. Because one person, they replied to my survey, to the open questions, and I think it's really interesting. They say like, hey, I never receive good messages, because I asked them what is a good message you receive. I never receive good messages because it's a keyword search. Well, for a lot of people it is. But I think if you take your time to look beyond those keywords, you can actually find a lot of stuff, and you don't have to act like you know stuff. Yeah. But you can say like, hey, I see your... So one example, I found this woman, she works at Google, and she's an engineer. And just saying like, hey, I see you're working on Google, and she mentioned like, I think the Maps platform. And just saying like, hey, I see you work at Google. What kind of functions have you been working on lately? Something cool, you know? Or saying something like, hey, I think I have to thank you for Google Docs because I use it every day. Yeah. Those kind of things can also give it a personal touch. Even if your team, your developers don't find hiring as important as you do. I think they don't want to spend time on that. Because that's also a problem. People don't... and I think that's a company problem and not a recruiter's problem, but that a lot of companies don't. Everyone knows hiring is important, but they don't want to spend time on it. A lot of hiring managers think like, hey, that's why you're there, right? And I'm like, no, I'm not.
Not really.
That's
it's interesting. I like that point of view. Yeah, obviously receiving that message like, hey, what are you working on? I love the product you're working on. Just builds an instant connection right away, because you go straight to. It means that you did your homework or something like that. Yeah.
So that's.
I love that. So that you mentioned being curious. Yeah. Like just go ahead and look for the thing. So that's interesting. So if you were to. You mentioned agency and then in-house. You have experience in both.
Yes.
Which one do you prefer most?
Oh, easy. Yeah, in-house. For the reason, and that's also a big reason that I got out of agency recruiter. For me, it felt like throwing candidates over a fence to a client and then never speaking to them again. Okay. For me, like the most joy I get out of being a recruiter in-house, and it's kind of different as a freelancer these days, but the thing, seeing candidates grow inside a company and being connected to them. I had several people since I started in-house telling me like, you changed my life. You
Okay.
know, I hired this guy from Kazakhstan, for example, and this guy from Portugal, and they tell me like, hey, you changed my life.
Yeah.
Thanks to you, I'm here and I'm doing
And
great. And you know, I'm still in touch with a lot of people that I hired
Yeah.
through my career.
That's great.
And that's you know, that's something that really warms me. This is so cheesy.
But it's just the truth. It's
And
just telling
that-
the way things are.
But I don't want to say anything bad about agency, because I do think it's the best learning school you'll have.
But it's also from whatever you said or whatever my previous guest mentioned. It's also brings that bad experience or reputation
Yeah.
for recruiters, because people don't really make that difference. Like, oh, are you an agency versus
True. That's
like,
something that I see in the surveys that I do.
Yeah.
People don't know and don't understand the difference
Yeah.
between agency and in-house recruiters, because for them, except the recruiter that they're working with in their company, but for them, all other recruiters are like those shitty people who are like messaging them with crappy messages. I do want to say, like, sometimes people are really angry towards recruiters and they send like really shitty replies. I always wonder why, because they have to keep in mind that I might work at this company right now, but maybe when I'm at Google, not that I have that ambition, but whatever company they do want to work and they get to me and they sent me a crappy message before, I'm never going to consider them as a
That's
candidate, you know? So even though if a recruiter sends you like if the recruiter sends you a normal message, like a normal, like something that's interesting and not asking you to apply or sending your resume or not a template with wrong names, reply, you know, say I'm not interested, and then a recruiter can follow up on that. Or don't reply, but don't say like crappy things.
Yeah.
Because it's unnecessary and it's going to hurt your reputation as a candidate, even though you're not looking right now.
Yeah.
You might be in the future.
Actually, that's one of the thing we during this podcast that we're trying to make sure that people understand that behind that screen they're just human being.
Yeah.
So we gotta be cool with like having these respectful conversation exchange. But I can understand like when you get spam. Still today, I still get a lot of emails, even though
I can imagine.
I have on my LinkedIn like I'm not available for a job. I'm building my own thing. I still get those messages. Like people just don't read. They have those tools that we don't see, where they can just send emails in bulks, and then when you receive that, you're like, you didn't do your homework.
And I really don't get why, as a recruiter, you would automate your first contact.
Yeah.
I don't get it, because it's in the end it's losing you candidates, potential people that you might want to hire in the future.
That's true. I have a few more questions
Yeah.
for you. So do you have any like I'm looking for two stories. One is probably your worst experience as a recruiter, and the best one. What will be? Do you have these kind of things?
My worst experience as a recruiter. So like
you can phrase it differently if you want. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure. I find it a hard question because I think so, and this is going to sound really cheesy too, but I think what I just said, like getting a bad response to messages, that's for me is a really bad experience. And because I really want people to like what I do, and I once had a negative reaction to one of my messages, but that was more like, hey, I'm not interested, and then send. But other than that, I don't really have. I think that was more on the agency side when calling people. They would like really don't like it, or I wouldn't know what to say. So he would be quiet for like 30 seconds, which was really awkward.
Awkward.
Yeah.
Say something. Say something. Say
Yeah,
something.
you know. And yeah, that's one thing.
And like a wonderful, like an amazing findings. Like you're like, go and find that superwoman or Superman, and then you're like, oh, that's kind of impossible, but let me go after it, and then you got that. Is there something like that?
Yeah, there is. There's one example, and I think that's my favorite hire until this day, and I have a lot of people that I really liked hiring and I really like talking to. But this was a senior product manager.
Okay.
And so I reached out to this person, and he was at a big company for a long time, and he was a senior mobile product manager. And I'm not going to name anything, but so I sent him a message, and he actually replied via LinkedIn, and I never sent LinkedIn messages, but I couldn't find his email anywhere. So I sent him a message on LinkedIn saying, hey, this and that, and would you be up for having a conversation with me? And he said, I never replied to recruiters, but yeah, this sounds interesting. Let's have a chat. So I told him, yeah, let's do a hangout, Google Hangouts.
Google
so
Hangout.
I say, hey, we can do this Tuesday on Hangouts. So he sent me a message back saying, yeah, where do you want to hang out? Should we meet at Central Station? And I'm like, dude, you're a product manager. But we hired him in the end, and he was the best hire ever. He really changed and made a lot of impact. And those are kind of the moments that you remember as a recruiter.
Yeah.
And but also this other candidate that I found on Hacker News, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And we hired him. And those are the moments that
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't have one really specific best
but
moment.
Those are like from a misunderstanding of the thing, or just a misconception of a message, and then you end up having hired. That's great. I mean, I like it.
Yeah, and other moments as a sourcer that really make me happy was when you really think, well, this is not going to work anymore. This search or this tool I'm trying to this conference that I'm trying to scrape, it's not working, and then you ask some of your friends. This actually happened last week. I was kind of done with the search, and you asked one of your friends for help, and they said, no, I can't do this right now. And then I was like, I'm going to try it one more time. And then it actually works, without having someone to help you with something. Yeah. And when you give up and you try one more time, and then it suddenly works because something just changed in your head and you know the answer. Yeah. Those are the moments that I really love.
Am I the only one seeing the passion speaking? Right? Yeah. So I'm not the only one. So thank you. So probably two more questions. Yeah. During this podcast, one of the main things we put forward is to learn from you, learn from our guests. We want to share their story, and we want to inspire people out there. But we also believe that there are people that inspire them, that to do whatever they do, or they just look up to. Do you have such a person in your network? And if you do, would you be willing to host the podcast on Applex? You being the host and the person being your guest. So if there's those are two questions in one.
That's interesting. Okay, yeah, I know a couple of people that I really look up to. So,
okay.
And
don't forget that we're gonna find them. We're gonna find you wherever you are, and we're gonna invite you here. Yeah. So
I don't wanna I don't wanna if I don't name you, it doesn't mean that I don't look up to you. But there's a couple of people who kind of changed my career as a recruiter, and that's because they trusted me. And the first one is Roland, and he's HR, so he's not really a recruiter, but he's someone who really inspires me and who really believed in me when I started out in recruitment. And challenged me to do better.
Okay.
And that's someone that I really like. He's so inspiring. I love listening and hearing his view on recruitment, HR, and stuff like that. Another person is Willem Wijnands, and he actually also hired me somewhere. But I started following him way before I knew he wrote blogs, and he is also a really amazing sourcer and tech recruiter, and he really helped me get better and stand up for myself in situations when I didn't really know what to do. So he's kind of my mentor. And there's this one other person, which is Enrico Heidelberg. Enrico. And he's, well, I think most recruiters in the Netherlands will know him. And he's like the uncle of every recruiter. And whenever I have something that I don't know about what to do myself, or when I'm looking for a new role, or he's the one who helped me make the final decision to go freelance when I didn't really know what to do anymore.
Okay.
And I would call him and ask him for advice. And those are the people that that really inspire me and that really are on top of this industry.
So you gave 3 of them. So unless you want to host 3 podcasts here,
sorry,
you're gonna have to choose one that will be that we at Actflix. We're going to find that person and talk to that person, invite them here.
I would love to talk to Enrico about that. Yeah, he's amazing.
Enrico, is that the way? We're coming your way at Actflix. We're gonna invite you here, and she's gonna be your host.
Oh wow.
come our ways. So it did happen that we did that already, and I love that because you can see that connection between people, and they're doing good, and then they're like, there's this other person that I think they're doing really great. It's great. I love that.
That's good.
So probably my final question, or just a final point that I want to cover with you, which is not really about tech recruitment or recruitment in general. It's you took a few months off, and I just want to tell what was that, and how what did you do, and how did that impact whoever you became after?
That's a good question. So earlier this year, starting in January, I together with my boyfriend, we took 6 months off to travel. And this is not something you decide in 1 month. So the idea of doing this started 3 or 4 years ago. In camping in True America for 3 weeks, we were like, oh my God, we need to do this for the rest of our lives. Well, that was not going to happen. So we started saving for this trip 2 years ago. And the main reason that we wanted to do this is that we are 30 now, and we don't have kids, and we both have a 40-hour job. We both have income, and why not? What was keeping us from doing that? And I have to say that it was a great experience. Was kind of scary though, completely tuning off. Because our industry as a recruiter, it changes so fast. What is working in January might be broken in March. So those kind of things kind of scared me, but in the end, it worked out. And we traveled through Africa, and we went to Southeast Asia, and we spent a month in Australia, which was amazing. Just spending so much time together every day. That was really cool.
How many countries did you do at the end? Or did you...
we went to Tanzania, South Africa, Namibia, Asia, 3 countries, and Australia, so 6, I think.
Okay, and then when you came back, you thought things would just change.
Would have
changed.
So before you go on a trip like this, you have the idea in your head that something is it's going to be a life-changing experience.
Okay.
And things back at home would be different, but when we got home, everything was the same, and so I wasn't the same person anymore, because I changed, and my view on certain things changed, and that was really interesting. But everyone around us didn't change. They still had the same feelings, and they didn't swim like in a sea in Vietnam full with plastic. So those kind of things, those kind of things really impact you. For me, I always knew that plastic was a problem, but until you swim like in a sea and being completely surrounded with plastic while you're swimming, that's something different, you know. Or when you
like you touch them, like you.
They were,
oh wow.
So and that's
why would you do that?
Yeah, because first I didn't know, and suddenly the current started changing, and then it was like plastic soup. But or seeing so much poverty, or you know, that really changes. So
your point of view on a lot of things. Yeah.
For example, like I used before I went on this trip, I would never think about not throwing away food, because it's just something when you go to a restaurant and you have some leftovers, you don't really do something with that in the Netherlands, because and now I so think differently about those kind of stuff. And it's not that I'm going to take a doggy bag because I don't have any people to give it to, but in any other situation I would. And I'm so those kind of things change you, and your vision on life, and your vision on how to do things and how to treat people.
And how about how to do sourcing and recruitment?
Well, I think it changes your not that it might change some bias you have about people on in other countries. So we all have this opinions about people from these cultures or those cultures, and in the end we are all people, and we're all trying to eat every day and enjoy our lives every day. And I think that's something that a lot of people, we all think, like, we all have opinions, but sometimes it's better to just like get down to earth and don't think about that kind of stuff, and think about what is the reason that someone from Indonesia is applying to your role. You know, what is and not that makes a difference in how you treat them as an applicant, but I do think it's a difference to how you treat them as a person when you're talking to them. Yeah,
better understanding their environment. Amazing. Do you read? Do you get to read books or things like that? Or
not a lot anymore, to be honest. I used to read a lot of books, but in the podcast era, it changed. I do listen to audiobooks, which I like. But I like physical books. I buy them, but then they
I do both. I was just asking because when I see you, the way you operate, feel like you're doing a lot of research, going deep into materials to understand what you could take out of it. So I probably thought like books were one of the area things that
the books that if I read books, it's like productive. I see the books Turn the Ship Around lying around here. Those are the kind of books that I read. Like it's more like personal growth, those kind of books. But in the end, I started listening to audiobooks and podcasts.
Okay, great. So I think I covered most of the thing that I wanted to know. Although there is this huge room, this big room of like things that I can still ask there. But I wish I can have you on the podcast again.
Yeah, I'd love to. I really like this conversation. So I hope people like to listen to it because I.
I think they will. Is there, like, you're gonna have the closing words, and then is there anything you want to add, want to share?
I think there's one thing that I want to say, that if you're a recruiter and you if you ever have the feeling like I don't know where to go or what to do, just ask the people around you and ask other recruiters in this industry, because a lot of people are willing to help and a lot of people are willing to think along with you. Just ask for things and don't wait for people to come to you with solutions. And I think that's one of the things. So if you ever feel like, hey, I want your opinion on this, feel free to ask me. I'm not always I can't promise that I am able to help, but if I am, I will.
Okay.
So
that's probably give me a segue to where do people find you online? Where would they find you online?
Well, if they have a bit of sourcing skills, probably everywhere.
You'll be a sourcer.
But I'm on Twitter, and that's at Sjamilla La. And I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, which is Sjamilla van der Toren.
Okay.
And I'm basically everywhere. I think you can find me on Hacker
She's
News,
online.
GitHub.
She's online on GitHub. Yeah.
SourceGround, whatever. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna say again, thank you for coming on the podcast. I think it was a great conversation, and I really wish we can have you on the podcast again.
Yeah, I'd love to come. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so just for the people listening and watching, this was another podcast of the Rec and Tech, and we trying to bring recruiters and developers together. And today we had Sjamilla with us, and she's an amazing freelance tech recruiter. We cover a lot of topics, and I hope these will inspire you. You're gonna learn from it, and you will be able to share whatever you learn with the people around you. So stay tuned for the next podcast, and thank you for listening and watching.